All right. Welcome, everybody. I know we're still going to have folks coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We appreciate you joining us live today. We've got a great webinar ahead brought to you by GEM and Talent Board on diversity sourcing, how to search and find underrepresented talent. I'm very excited that you're joining us today. We got a great speaker ahead. But before we get started, I want to just bring up some housekeeping items first. And the fact is we are recording this webinar, although again, we're glad that you have joined us live today. And we'll make that recording available tomorrow. And you make sure to ask questions throughout too. We'll take those at the end of the webinar. It's pretty standard format for webinars. And please do use the Q&A portion of the Zoom dashboard. You can do little comments to us in the chat, that's fine, but ask your questions in the Q&A part of the Zoom. We really appreciate that. And again, we want to hear from you too. So you've got comments throughout, you can feel free to post those as well, but we've got a great presentation ahead and that's what we're going to do today. And my name is Kevin Grossman, president of Talent Board, and I'm going to go away in a minute. I'm going to turn it over to our speaker and then come back at the end when we take questions with my team member, Ron Mockamer as well. So let's go ahead and introduce our main presenter, Georgena Frazier, who is the recruiting program manager at GEM. Welcome, Georgina.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
So I'm gonna go into the background now. Go away, and this is it's all you now. All right, welcome.
Perfect. So my pronouns are she and they. I've been working with GEM for actually almost 2 years now, and I couldn't be more impressed with the strategies my team has created to source diverse talent, and super excited to share them with you all today. So during today's webinar, I'm going to be sharing sourcing strategies for finding unrepresented or URG talent. And I'll be referring to those prospects as URGs, unrepresented groups, for the rest of this webinar. Diversity is a value that's always been a part of GEM's DNA, from the very beginning. So, it has to be a big part of our recruiting programs, from sourcing to nurturing to conversations around inclusion, equity for URG talent is a very important part of my job here at GEM. And I feel super lucky that is also one of my personal core values. And I like to be the plug for my community. And so anything that I can do to help them advance in their career, I am here for it. So after I share my sourcing strategies, Katarina from the GEM product team will be joining us to give a demo of the GEM platform and diversity analytics, which supports efforts to build diverse teams. And lastly, I am by no means an expert. I've just had some success finding diverse candidates in pretty interesting ways. So please share your questions and sourcing tips in that Q&A section as well. And if we don't get to all of your questions in the webinar, please follow up with me offline. All right, so before we jump into sourcing strategies, I want to explore the current state of diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, so to understand where we are all at in terms of sourcing URGs, let's run a quick poll. You should see the poll question in the webinar portal. There it is. And the question is, do you currently have initiatives in place to source URGs, folks from unrepresented groups? All right, and the options are yes, no, no, but we plan to in the future. All right, and so once again, you can find the poll question in the webinar portal. All right, I see some of these results coming in. Keep them coming in. All right, and Kevin, can you share the results with us? All right, so 52% of you said yes, 17% of you said no, and 31% said we plan to in the future. All right, I hope this webinar helps with all of those. All right, so why is sourcing URG so important? First off, I want to talk about the various recruiting channels to attract talent and why sourcing is so important for this. So sourcing is critical to diversity recruiting because most channels like referrals and inbound are inherently less diverse, right? So if you're not actively sourcing and nurturing a diverse talent pool, you won't see a diverse pipeline, right? Or a diverse set of interviews or a diverse team. So here at GEM, each time we open a new rec, we actually focus solely on sourcing URGs. And we, in conjunction, like don't post the job on the career site until other levels need to be pulled, right? So that's when we feel as though we've exhausted that pipeline or the business need is too strong. And nurturing long before we even open a role and sourcing URGs at the very beginning of the role opening allows us to control the pipeline by making sure URG talent is at the top of the funnel, therefore inside your talent pool. All right, so just to set the stage, I'd like to share some numbers on the current state of diversity in the workforce. So 60% of job seekers claim a diverse workforce is an important consideration when evaluating a company or a job offer. And according to a survey GEM conducted this year, 50% of talent leaders say diversity is the most important trend shaping the recruiting industry in 2020. This percentage is from a survey GEM ran in April. But we would anticipate the percentage of talent leaders focused on diversity hiring has gone up, especially over the past couple of months, and then will continue to do so. So yeah, even though the majority of job seekers and talent leaders prioritize diversity, companies are still struggling with DEI, I'm sorry. And the struggle is very real. 49% of talent professionals cited finding diverse candidates to interview as the biggest barrier to improving diversity. So if that's a challenge you're facing, hopefully these tips I'm going to go over today will help you address that. But it's also not just about filling quotas by hiring people from URG groups, right? It's also about equity and inclusion and giving people from those groups into leadership roles. And we still don't see a proportional representation of URGs in leading roles. Currently, the Fortune 500 list has 3 companies led by Black CEOs and 37 companies led by female CEOs. So while the percentage of female CEOs is at an all-time high, yay, female-led companies still represent only 7% of that list. So there's a lot of work to do across the board. And I think sourcers and recruiters have an important role in all of this, which is why I'm excited to show you how I find URG talent today. All right. So let's talk about how to find folks from unrepresented groups. All right, so before you begin sourcing URGs, I want to talk about a couple of crucial paradigm shifts you might need to make. So sourcing for URGs may require you to shift some fundamental ideas you have, right? Including what a quote unquote good candidate looks like. So what we've accomplished, what their journey to get there looks like. In other words, you want to become extremely aware of your unconscious bias and how they play out in your sourcing. So if you haven't already, we recommend committing to putting yourself through an unconscious bias training, whether that's with Ulysses Smith from Blend, Facebook, Catalyst, or elsewhere. Most of these you can do in an afternoon. And while they won't eliminate your biases, they'll surface them to your subconscious so you can be aware of them as you move through LinkedIn and respond accordingly. So the second mental paradigm shift would be adjusting your concerns that adjusting concerns and metrics you've come to use as indicators of success, right? So like the traditional boxes you've learned to check: elite schools, years of management experience, will alienate women, Black and Latinx talent who statistically see fewer promotions than their white male counterparts. So skipping over a prospect because the work history on LinkedIn shows a lapse in employment means alienating parents, right? Typically mothers, caretakers, again, often women, trans folks who've had to take time off for anything, or veterans who served time in the military or other URG groups. So ultimately, the more you open your mind in this process, the better. URGs are developing skills in alternative learning environments and non-traditional means. So this may mean sourcing for candidates in industries you don't typically recruit from. All right. So tip one, diversifying the keywords you source on LinkedIn is going to be a really important part of your sourcing strategy. So my first sourcing tip is to search for prospects who attended schools that predominantly serve URG populations. We know how easy it is to keep returning to the same schools you've recruited candidates from in the past. After all, they've proven their ROI. But when you source from schools that predominantly serve URG students and diverse populations, you're statistically more likely to come across that URG talent, right? So these could include historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, Latinx serving institutions, tribal colleges, women's colleges, historically Black sororities and fraternities, churches, LGBT sororities and fraternities. And you can also seek out schools with high diversity indexes. All right, let's move on to tip two. All right, so the next tip is thinking beyond traditional degrees. The next tip is thinking beyond traditional degrees, things like coding boot camps, nano degree programs, community colleges, and vocational training programs. These are all technical training programs that offer the same skills a university does, but because they don't have the systemic barriers that often exist in collegiate programs, they attract more students from non-traditional backgrounds. They also attract students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds and talent like mothers and caretakers who may not have the privilege of attending college classes during the day. And this is a great way to search for URGs on LinkedIn. You can also search specific programs that explicitly serve URGs. And one example of this is the Grace Hopper program. And this is a coding bootcamp for women. There's also Floodgate Academy, which I attended, and Black Girls Code, Hack the Hood, and a number of other comp sci programs that explicitly serve URGs. All right. Another search you can do is for professional organizations that serve URGs. The organizations you see on the slide are just a snapshot of some of the orgs that exist. So there's organizations for Black engineers, females in tech, vets who code, trans in tech, Black product managers. I just found sisters in sales, and many more listed in GEM's diversity sourcing at the top of the funnel ebook plug, which is linked in the attachment section as well. So in order to use these organizations to search for talent, I would start with one on this list that interests you based on the roles you're trying to fill, and then get creative, right? Use Google or LinkedIn to expand on your list, making sure those keywords are a combination of role or skill set specific and URG specific. And then ask your female or other URG employees if they know or belong to any orgs that they'd recommend. All right. Another thing I often do when sourcing URGs is search pronouns and common URG names. Remembering that female pronouns, right, she and her, will return predominantly female results on LinkedIn. Non-binary pronouns such as they, them, z, them, etc., will return the profiles of gender nonconforming talent. And so pair those pronouns with the skills or the role you're looking for. And then for female talent, consider Boolean strings of the most popular first names. Though note this will serve you predominantly white female talent. And then for other diverse groups, try surnames, right? So you can use the US Census Bureau to identify the most common surnames for people who identify as Black, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, etc. Awesome. So if you're open to relocating employees, you can search for talent in locations that have high URG populations. Some examples include Arizona, New York, Texas, Georgia, California. And you may also search specific cities such as Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and LA. So searching for extracurriculars. So these extracurriculars that prospects list on their profiles might represent their identity or allyship of URG groups, right? So things like employee resource groups, ERGs, volunteer experience, church leadership roles, and a lot of professionals involved in these groups will list it on their LinkedIn profiles. I think it's a great indicator not only of their ethnic background, right, but their involvement and commitment to making the workplace more diverse and inclusive. And I can also see D&I licenses and certifications being more prevalent in a few years, and offer another great way to find URGs. All right, so the last tip I have around keyword sources is the use of hashtags. And so hashtag Hire Black Initiative, it's gotten over 1,200 LinkedIn followers in like just the first month of creating the hashtag. And so think about where they'll be like a year from now or 5 years from now. The hashtag lesbians who tech is always a good one. And then even attending a lesbians who tech annual conference each year has had a pretty good ROI for us. And this year I went to one, and I'm now a part of a Queers in Tech Slack group, which is pretty fun. Angela Ross has a nonprofit, and the name is Trans Tech Social Enterprises. And this is a nonprofit that aims to empower and educate and employ LGBTQ plus people through the use of technology. And lastly, Sister Circle, Black Women in Tech. It's a LinkedIn group. It's a Facebook group. I think they're working on an app now. They are fantastic. I actually found someone from my team from that group. And all of these are just a few that I'm aware of. So please let me know what you all are finding. All right, so now that you've done all this research, you've got an impressive list of organizations your target talent is affiliated with, you've used these names to search for people on LinkedIn, but why not follow the organizations themselves? Right, so pay attention to the comments made on posts to those organizations' pages, right? Who is engaging thoughtfully and intelligently? They might be your next passive talent. LinkedIn also has LinkedIn groups, which are online hubs for professionals with similar professions or interests to come together and share content, ask questions, and make business contacts. These are over 2 million groups on LinkedIn. So you should be able to do a search and find a number of groups that fit the talent, that fit the type of talent that you're looking for. But I would also recommend joining these groups. I would also recommend not joining these groups and just calling it a day, right? So once your request to join a group has been accepted, be an active community member, right? Like introduce yourself, engage with the members, ask questions, share information, and then listen more than talking, right? The more valuable you are as a group member, the more value people will expect you to bring to their careers when it is time to mention those open roles for your org. Awesome. So another awesome feature on LinkedIn that's been pretty helpful for finding URGs is the people also viewed feature to show similar profiles. So when you find a terrific prospect, right, click into people also viewed or similar profiles. And then using matching algorithms, LinkedIn will serve up 100 more profiles of qualified talent like the one you've discovered. This feature essentially allows you to reverse engineer a search, right? So think of the most talented, highest performing employees in your org, or your dream hires or talent you didn't accept your offer, or stellar talent you had to pass on in the last round of hiring, right? Look them up and then dive into similar profiles. All right, so similarly, you can find a lot of URGs just from looking at someone, just by looking at who someone is engaging with, right? Whose posts they're liking, whose posts they're commenting on, whose posts they're resharing, right? And so at GEM, for example, diversity has been a core value of the company since the very beginning. And I have a lot of colleagues who post and like posts related to that value. I often look at who's reacting to those posts or whose posts they are reacting to or are commenting on their post to discover talent whom that value also resonates with, right? And who might fit into the URG groups I'm sourcing for. Another thing I often do is add people who might not be the best fit now, maybe because they're overqualified or underqualified, but then fit some type of criteria I'm looking for, right? Like, because their networks may come in handy in the future. I might add these people to my network, or even add them to GEM. And so I can include them in an email sequence when I'm ready to source for a particular role. Maybe they aren't necessarily suited for the role, but they might be able to connect me with someone who is, right? Maybe directly or through their LinkedIn network. All right. So LinkedIn's career pages will let you share your company story and showcase your culture, right? So from the perspective of your diversity initiatives, this will mean telling your company's diversity story, right? Sharing your D&I goals, highlighting the honors you've been awarded in the D&I space. And what's so great about LinkedIn's career pages is that they're tailored to the user, right? So visitors will see the content that's most likely relevant to them based on your target audience. And so an awesome branded page that highlights diversity in your organization is collateral you'll want to point to in your outreach to URGs. I encourage you to, I encourage the sharing of roles you're sourcing for, right? Most URG groups get roles because of word of mouth, Facebook, IG, Twitter, Clubhouse is a thing now, right? So when reaching out, send a JD link and ask them to share in the nicest way possible, of course. All right. So there are a number of offline strategies as well that you can use for sourcing URGs. We know traditional offline strategies will include um, will be online because of COVID. But because these activities can still be really valuable for sourcing URGs, at GEM, we usually host recruiting events at our office. Remember happy hours, y'all. We won't be doing any of those anytime soon. But we've started hosting some career development webinars for college students or entry-level folks to help build pipeline and nurture entry-level talent. You might choose to do something similar for URGs, right? And then involving everyone at your company is really important for sourcing URGs. You know, we think every employee should be consistently recruiting for your organization. You know, talent acquisition doesn't have a monopoly on networking, right? So employees across teams and at every level of the organization have and should be building relationships with talent everywhere. And encourage everyone in the company to make networking a priority whenever possible. This may mean explaining to managers the importance of allotting time for team members to participate in groups and attend events. And building those considerations into your company's DNA will eventually ensure that bringing diverse talent into your pipeline is a collection of organic day-to-day processes that becomes like second nature to everyone in your organizations. I really love meetups. They're online now. They're not as awkward as they sound. And I think meetups are a really great way. You know, they're already ready-made social hubs where URGs will share interest and are already spending time in, right? So meetup.com is a great platform to search for community and professional events happening near you that will likely attract talent, likely attract your target prospects. And then host your own networking events, right? Over time, you may start hosting your own offline events for your Gs in the community. These events will give attendees a chance to see what's behind the scenes of your company, right? Assuming you host them over video. And they'll also make it easier for employees to attend, right? So this means prospective talent can get a firsthand experience of what the interpersonal dynamics and your culture as a whole feels like, right? So make sure your event title addresses the interests and the speakers represent the communities you hope to engage. All right. So even if you don't advertise your Tech Talk as a event for women who code or queers who code, if 2 out of the 4 people on your panel are put together are women and one is openly queer, you'll probably end up with an audience that's skewed in your favor. Partner with organizations, right? Partner with organizations that represent the communities you want to reach. Partnerships can take many forms, and you're only limited by your creativity here. So think about how you can strategically partner with organizations you feel most aligned with to build your employer brand. And maybe it means setting up a table at their events. Maybe it means sending an ambassador from your org to speak on their panels. An excellent opportunity to share the relevant work your company is doing, gain visibility, credibility, and network with prospective candidates. Maybe it means sponsorship, right? Either of particular events or an organization as a whole. Maybe it means just connecting some of your promising students at a given boot camp with mentors at your company. SV Academy is one organization that GEM partners with and who we've hired a number of employees from. SV Academy is an educational program on a mission to democratize the tech industry through a business development fellowship. And this is just one example of the types of orgs your company can partner with to find talent from non-traditional backgrounds or non-traditional degrees. And then also collaborate with colleges and universities. All right, so that concludes my portion of the presentation today. I hope these tips help everyone source for URGs. And if you have any questions for me, please submit them using the questions feature, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Katerina from GEM's product team for a live GEM demo.
Thanks, Georgina. Hi, everyone, and thank you for giving us your time and attention today. As Georgina mentioned, sourcing is an integral part of any recruiting strategy focused on increasing underrepresented representation. So I'm excited to talk about how talent acquisition teams are using GEM to streamline their sourcing efforts and give a quick demo of the platform, including our diversity analytics feature. GEM is an all-in-one recruiting platform that integrates with LinkedIn, email, other platforms, and your applicant tracking system, and eliminates much of a manual and tedious work that sourcers and recruiters do in reaching out to prospective candidates. GEM enables data-driven, world-class recruiting teams to find, engage, and nurture top talent. With GEM, you can find, engage, and nurture top talent, get full funnel pipeline analytics from outreach to offer, and gain unparalleled visibility into diversity of your hiring funnel. With GEM, customers source 5 times faster, double their response rates, and double their conversions to initial phone screen. We're proud at GEM to partner with over 500 top recruiting teams. So what I'd love to do now is show you a demo of a feature that can help your team assess how you're doing with your diversity initiatives. Though diversity has been top of mind for recruiters for a long time now, it's been especially difficult and even impossible to track diversity across the entire pipeline, especially at the top of the funnel. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen so you can see a little bit of how GEM can provide these kinds of insights. What I'm going to be doing is a live demo of 2 parts of this product. One is called Outreach Stats and one is called Pipeline Analytics, and I'll talk a little bit about how these can help. So Outreach Stats is you can think of a way for you to see the results, the responses, the response stats to all of your outreach activities. So as I mentioned, if you're reaching out to maybe a diverse slate of candidates, but for some reason your message might be alienating some of them, maybe they don't feel that they might belong at your organization, maybe some of them are dropping out of the funnel even before they can even get a response to you. So Outreach Stats is a great way to diagnose whether or not that might be happening. So let me just show you here. We've got April, March, February, January. And what I can do here is I can break down by gender and see whether or not there's a difference in response rates between men and women. And I can also do the same thing for race or ethnicity. So, if I'm looking at my pipeline here, do I feel like I need to increase the representation of a certain group? Do I feel like the response rates are looking maybe poor for a certain group? You can also group these by team members, so you can see how specific team members' messaging might be affecting your pipeline. You can also group by sequence to see whether or not specific sequences perform better with these groups, and then group along some other groupings as well. The second part of this demo that I wanted to show you was in pipeline analytics. So pipeline analytics is a way to see your outreach across the entire funnel. So we've talked about this a couple times. But here, for example, you could break down your pipeline. Actually, let's say we're interested in breaking down by department. So in that case, what we're going to do is group by department. And then let's break down by gender. So now I can see, let's say we're hiring for some engineering talent, how pass-through rates are looking across men and women. And there's a really cool feature here as well. A forecasting calculator. Let's say that we are wanting to hire 3 engineering roles in the next year. And we're curious to know if we did want to make sure that women had a chance in this pool, how many candidates we'd want to reach out to. And it looks like, given our historical pass-through rates, that would be 91 candidates to expect 3 hires. Let's say, let's say this is a 100% rate between onsite and offer. Then we can see maybe how that changes these numbers. So pipeline analytics is super powerful. Again, you can group by a lot of things if you're maybe homing in on a specific job or a specific recruiter. If you want to look at rejection reasons even, between different genders or different races or ethnicities, you can do all of that in pipeline analytics. So that was a very brief demo of GEM's analytics platform. GEM is a lot more than that. It also automates the sourcing part of it as well. But before we get into Q&A, and thank you to those of you who have already written in with some great questions. I just wanted to give you an easy way to request a personalized demo of GEM so you can see more of the features we highlighted today and find out how GEM might work for you and your team. So this poll is going to be really simple. There's just 2 options. One is yes and one is no. And then once we get some responses to this poll, we'll go ahead and kick off to Q&A.
All right, should we go ahead and you want to close it now, Katerina?
Kelly, are we okay to close the poll?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and close it and move on to Q&A. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. And thank both you, Katerina and Georgina. That was a wealth of information, by the way. Number one, that I think so many good tips that you shared, and it was pretty clear in the comments, the chat box, as well as the questions that came in, that lots of great tips that folks were frantically jotting down. Georgina, just to open up Q&A.
Sure.
Just one question that I had is what's a place to start again? You shared so many great recommendations and tips, but I mean, just, you know, again, kind of summarize, where should I start if I'm an organization that I really am trying to do a better job at sourcing URGs?
Probably LinkedIn. You can source, actually in the search box, you can put URG and see what that comes up with. If you are looking for URGs in sales, I'd say look out for Sisters in Sales. That group has hundreds of participants. So I'd probably just try putting something into the search box of
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Got
Right?
it.
If you're looking for URGs in sales, URG plus sales.
There you go. That's
real
excellent.
simple.
That's what I wanted. That's where I wanted to start, Georgina. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and then I've also got my team member, Ron Mockamer on. Ron, let's get to we've got lots of questions to get to. So why don't you give me a hand and let's start off with some of those.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. So remember, if you could submit into the Q&A section of Zoom, that would be wonderful, everyone. And you did get lots of shout outs and kudos. So wonderful presentation today, everyone. So one of the first questions that had come in was just asking, how long do you source URGs before posting the job?
I think it depends on the amount of URGs that we assume are out there, right? So we usually create a like a sourcing map, just kind of thinking about, running a quick search on LinkedIn and finding, everyone with the title. So specifically, I'm looking for a technical support engineer, and so I looked on LinkedIn and put in technical support engineers, found, there's 17,000 of them. And then we assume like 10 to 13% of them are URGs, right? And so when I feel like I've exhausted, when I feel like I found like 15%, right? Because those numbers are kind of weird. Then I would probably open it.
That's great. And
So
again,
I think it depends.
Sure. And it will depend on probably the specific requisition in mind and
right.
And who you've historically targeted for that and who you want to, and what you're also trying to be more inclusive on the recruiting and sourcing side too. So.
Right. And so, historically we've seen lower numbers of URGs in tech. So probably for some more of those like technical roles, you'll be able to exhaust that talent pool pretty quickly.
Got it. Thank you. Ron, what's next?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So this question was asking, how do you convince candidates your company values diversity and inclusion when they point out an executive team with little to no underrepresented groups?
I would be really honest and talk about what y'all are doing about it, right? Like here at GEM, we have an initiative to build the social networks of our leaders with URG talent, right? And so that's like an ongoing project that we've been doing for almost 2 years now.
Excellent.
Thank you. Just keep rolling through these questions then. Thank you.
Totally. Oh, I have one more thing. I have one more thing with that question. Sorry, real quick.
Hold that.
There are tons of D&I leaders out on LinkedIn. Maybe reach out to them, have them come in and talk to you guys. Like if you don't have a project or a process already, and they can help you like figure that out.
Yeah, really good point. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Next question was asking, is it recommended to join a group for Black women in tech if you are not BIPOC?
Yes.
Simple enough.
Yes. Some groups are closed, so you won't be able to. Like they'll ask you questions before you join. But a lot of these groups are open, and a lot of folks want folks from all kinds of groups. So, I think a lot of these groups are named. Because they're catering to a certain unrepresented group, they're going to be named that to attract them, but everyone's welcome, right? Almost all the groups that I'm a part of, Queers in Tech, Black women in tech, like they're open to everyone.
Georgina, I've got a wrinkle question to that, because I remember years ago when Stack Overflow and GitHub were sites that were first launched for tech professionals, and it's like their programming sites. But I remember the discussion around with recruiters of, yes, it's recommended that you join these groups. And this goes back even pre-internet days when we did have like email server groups and, joining them. But to be part of the conversation, but not to immediately pitch. What is your recommendation there?
Yeah, I like joining groups and just introducing myself,
Sure.
right? And maybe not even saying that I'm a recruiter, right? Saying, like, hey, I'm here to like be a part of the space. And commenting on things and having conversations with people outside of having your role open is a really easy and friendlier way to start nurturing folks.
Sure.
If you do have a job, I definitely would post it.
Sure.
Because everyone's looking for a job, especially now.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe just start off by introducing yourself. I actually think that's the best way.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. I just brought that up only because I think, and there's obviously going to be people in any and all of these groups that are going to be receptive to potential opportunities, because
right.
All it takes is that right one. I may not even be looking right, and you just knocked on my door. I'm
exactly.
like, what's that about? Okay. So, all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ron.
Yes, thank you very much. So next question was just asking, would you recommend starting your keyword searches on LinkedIn, Google, or some other search engine job site?
I really like LinkedIn, but if LinkedIn isn't giving you what you want, then I switch to Google.
Georgina, I've also heard sometimes that some recruiters have found a lot of success on Twitter and Facebook. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, with those highly technical roles, Twitter, with like design roles, probably Figma. Twitter, actually designers are on Twitter all the time too. So yeah, for more of like the technical roles, I'd say Facebook and Twitter, but for more of the business roles, I'd say LinkedIn.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We have more, right, Ron? They keep coming.
We do. Thank you.
That's great.
So the next question was asking, with so many people working from home right now, are candidates more or less responsive? And then kind of follow up, is a phone call a better way to reach candidates right now, or is LinkedIn email outreach preferred during the pandemic and during these times?
I would say response rates are higher for just networking calls. So when I've reached out to folks and asked to literally just have a networking call, they have been super responsive. Actually, yeah, and so less so with roles that I actually have open. I have a lot of good success with emails over phone calls. I think it's I don't know. I must be old or something, because it feels a little awkward to like just randomly call someone before sending an email. Like sometimes in the email, I'll tell them that I'm going to call them.
Sure.
So yeah, for me, email.
These kids today with their texts and their Snapchats and right? Sure.
It might be a generational thing. Please, someone tell me differently. I will start calling everyone, okay?
But it's funny though about that, right? Because the joke is, and whether you're in marketing or recruiting, and we all know the parallels there, right? And is the fact that a lot of us we're just not answering our phone anyway these days, especially if we don't know who it is, right? And a lot of times if a number comes up and it's not anybody in our contacts or whatever the case is, we aren't going to answer. And it's the text is something that we all pay attention to. Anyway, not like I'm trying to sell texting to anybody, but there you go.
The next time I present on this, I'll do some texting and some calls.
There you go. Do it.
Results.
Absolutely. Throw that in there. Ron, what else do we have?
Yes, thank you both. So the next question was asking, how do you stay on top of the hashtags? They are always changing.
Yeah.
Always. There's so many.
And different iterations, right? Different iterations of the same thing.
Exactly. I have a Google Doc. Every time I find a new one, I just slip it in. I try to constantly talk to other recruiters in the same space as well, and kind of share stuff and ask them, what hashtags they're seeing.
Sure.
And then when I talk to candidates, I'll ask them, what other hashtags are you a part of? Why did you respond to my message? Do you know anyone else that's looking for a role as well?
Right.
And those have had
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
really good responses.
Sure. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. So in addition to the URG groups and the techniques and all the great tips you listed today, do you have a cheat sheet or any additional resources or any other tips you would want to share with the group?
Ooh. I think I think we've done a blog post on this.
Maybe it's something that we can loop in when we send out the notifications tomorrow for all those who attended and registered. Maybe we can include that link.
I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you guys find it, we'll be happy to share it. So
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's in the Zoom link right now.
Oh, is it in the chat? You mean?
I believe so. It might not be. I'm sorry. I'll send it after.
No, send it after, and we'll make sure we'll include it for the note that we send out. No worries. All good.
I think we'll include that with.
Are we winding down, Ron?
Yeah, we're just getting through the questions. I think we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
We have some more time. What are your top tips for helping hiring managers let go of their limiting success indicators, such as elite schools, for example?
Georgina, while you're thinking, I can just share my perspective. That I've heard talking to recruiters. I'm not a recruiter myself, but this is definitely, I think this is where recruiters really come in and make a difference, affect the business. And it's a really important strategic conversation to have. Depending on the hiring manager that you're working with, oftentimes I've found that the most successful strategy just is with data. So if you do have GEM, of course, I know GEM, so I can speak about GEM, but we do have this tool called Prospects, and it has some basic filtering capabilities. And you might, using Prospects, you might be able to filter on years of experience women, and then just show the hiring manager this is what the talent pool is going to look like. Another way to do it is cohorting, where you, if you go ahead and source with the hiring manager's stringent requirements, you can show them then with outreach stats or pipeline analytics, well, this is what your talent pool looks like. If we want to change that, these are some of the requirements that I suggest that we change based on my experience.
Great. Yep. +1 to both of those. You probably have someone at your organization that comes from a non-traditional background that's kicking butt and taking names. And so I would remind the hiring manager of that person, right? So maybe that person doesn't have, isn't coming from an elite school, or maybe doesn't even have like a high school diploma, like point to how successful that person is. And sometimes that gives a little bit of credibility into, looking for folks that are not coming from those elite schools.
And you've also got even corporate examples of, like the big four accounting firms and other, global enterprises that have been public over the past few years, that they've de-emphasized where the person goes to school, and even less so even on the education itself, depending on the role specifically and how much that's taken into their culture. I know that I've definitely been reading that over the past few years too. So Ron, why don't I think we got one or two more. Let's go ahead and take those, and then we can wrap. Sound good?
Yeah. So I know one of them is just about the Sherman HRCI. So just a reminder, we'll be sending all of the recording to everyone tomorrow, as well as the Sherman HRCI information. And then we'll also, like we said, we'll include that blog post link that we had referred to as well. So we will definitely do that.
Great. So is that a wrap then?
It looks like we do have, one more question.
Okay, let's do it.
So the question was asking, it was regarding to AAPI. Would you consider AAPI as part of URG, the underrepresented group?
I think that's a really great question, and it's definitely contextual. I think you could apply this question in many ways. Are veterans underrepresented groups? Are members of the LGBTQ community underrepresented groups? I've heard a lot from the types of customers that we work with that, for example, in sales leadership, AAPI can be considered underrepresented, or in other leadership roles, AAPI can be considered underrepresented. So it is really important sometimes to filter down more than just looking at a whole company perspective.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
That's great. Well, listen, Katerina and Georgina, thank you, and Jem very much. Thanks everybody for attending today as well. And we appreciate your time. And it was, again, a wealth of information on sourcing underrepresented groups. So thank you both very much again, and have a great rest of the week.